Welcome to Chats with Changemakers, the Northeast podcast for people who want to make the world a better place.
Hello and welcome to Chats with Changemakers. I'm your host, Kate Duffy, and in this episode, I spoke to Kate Mukungu, who is a community celebrant. And Kate chose this term, community celebrant, with great care to represent the important work that she is doing in relation to inclusivity of ceremonies and the need for open conversations about death. So a quick trigger warning here. We are going to be talking about funerals and death in this episode. So if you're not in the right headspace for that, please feel free to go and listen to any other of our episodes. But otherwise, let's get to the interview. Hello, Kate.
Hi, Kate. This is going to be interesting. Kate speaks to Kate.
Kate and Kate. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you ever so much for agreeing to speak to me, Kate. So let's jump straight in. Tell me about your passion. What is your why?
My why for the practice that I've set up as a community celebrant is to focus on really personalising ceremonies for people. Human beings have been having ceremonies since before the days of church, since before the days of state. And I feel very strongly about putting that focus back on the people for whom ceremonies exist. So whether that is a funeral or a naming ceremony or a wedding or any other type of ceremony, that we centre that around the people being honoured.
Interesting. So where did that come from, Kate? That's a really specific call to action.
For me, it came from the idea of thinking about what a ceremony is for and who a ceremony is for. Because human beings have been having ceremonies long before the church or the state kind of regulated that whole event. And in thinking about at different times over history who has been excluded from ceremony, so before same-sex marriage was introduced, a marriage ceremony, say people who wanted to marry someone of the same sex were excluded from that. Historically as well, in different churches, people who died by suicide may have been excluded from certain ceremonies. I wanted to be part of more inclusive ceremonies, and I think that we're moving to that. I also wanted to be part of contributing to the role ceremony plays in our lives, because I'm also concerned about the fact that the cost of ceremonies, particularly funerals, is causing a big problem for people at this time of the cost of living and our financial concerns. So I think part of reclaiming what a ceremony means also involves thinking about the sacrifices that we might make for a ceremony and encouraging people to question that. So I think for me, as I move through life, because although ceremony work thinks about birth, life and death, I just really wanted to be part of making ceremonies positive for people.
It's amazing. I want you to tell me, Kate, more about the poverty side of things. So you've mentioned to me before about funeral poverty, and I'm not sure that all of our listeners will understand perhaps what that means. So tell us a little bit more about this issue that you're really wanting to address.
Well, every year Sun Life does a report on the cost of funerals, but also the impact that that cost is having on people. And every year, the number of people who are going into debt because of the cost of planning a funeral is increasing. So recently it was 1 in 7, and then within the period of a year that jumped to 1 in 5. Now that's nationally. The Northeast, we know, often has higher indices of poverty. So my guess is that that figure is higher than 1 in 5. Funeral costs have risen, particularly during and since COVID. And we all know that the money that people have to get by on each week or each month is not stretching as it used. It doesn't take a lot to work out that this is an increasing problem. I am aware of the fact that our media now has a lot of emphasis on direct cremation, pure cremation, as a way of reducing costs. And I can see how for a lot of people that might seem like a really good idea. I'm not sure that everyone understands what that means to have a direct cremation and the impact that might have on surviving family members. But I guess I have a concern that people, particularly as they age and move towards the end of life, may feel a sense of pressure to make that choice because they don't want to be a financial burden on their loved ones. So I don't want to come across as just criticizing that choice. It's more about saying, let's look at all of it in the round as to how we make funerals affordable, or how we support people who will struggle to have an affordable funeral. But let's also make sure that people have the right to make choices that are right for them and comforting for the people that are left behind.
Yeah, that's so important. And I know, so you set up as a sole trader, trading under Kate Mukungu Community Celebrant. If anyone wants to go and Google that, go check out her fabulous website. What does that mean then? All of this, that feels like a huge amount of work to do in order to be, at the one hand, supporting people to have more ceremonies, more, celebrating life and that sort of thing, but then also all of this work around really understanding funerals and death education, I guess. So what is it that you do through your business to solve this issue or move it forward?
You're right. It's a huge issue and there's a lot of work to do. And in some respects, I have to be very upfront about the fact that I am approaching this as an individual and also as a form of, I'm going to say, semi-retirement. So I'm focusing on the quality of what I do rather than say I'm trying to solve it on a huge scale because it's unrealistic. So on one hand, I am trading. I trained up as a celebrant to write and deliver ceremonies, and I got a qualification in that. So I'm offering that service in the same way that any other celebrant would. I refer to myself as a community celebrant because of the values that I'm bringing into that work and also because of the ways that I want to reach people. So that's on one hand, if somebody's having a ceremony, they can book me and pay me. On the other aspect of my work, because I have a long background in community work and I know the organisations out there and who is reaching people in challenging situations, I'm offering myself really to come and have conversations with communities, with groups, because death is the one thing that all of us know is going to happen to us, whether we want to talk about it or think about it. And I want to encourage those conversations actually in a fun way if possible, or at least in a positive way. So I'm going through my own journey at the moment of looking at, what do I want when I die? What do I want to have done with my body, basically, when I die? And I'm sharing that through my social media. And I'm very happy to come and speak to community groups. In relation to funeral poverty, I have an initiative, a small initiative within my celebrancy practice, because I refer to it as a practice more than a business, although it is a business. And the initiative is called Solidarity Ceremonies. So anyone who books me, if they want to pay a little bit more, they don't have to, but they're very welcome to. And I hold that money. And then through my connections with other community organisations, when they're supporting someone who's in a huge difficulty around the cost of a funeral, I can use that money that I've been holding to subsidise the celebrancy costs, either in part or in full. So the idea being, one person or one family having a ceremony have in solidarity thought of someone in a more difficult situation than them and reached out to them to say, I want to help. It's a tiny thing and I'm not going to dress it up as something huge, but I do think it's an interesting way to work, and it's the conversation that I wanted to provoke as well as the direct support to people. Because if trading organizations or businesses, you see it often in cafes, buy a cup of coffee, people put some money,
Yep.
pay it forward. So it's about having that similar approach and encouraging other organizations to think likewise. I also think there is work to be done around challenging the industry and the way that, and I know this is going to sound very political, but the way that kind of capitalism has attached itself to the cost of dying. And there's some great Northeast women doing work on this. I would like to think that I'm going along their side around looking at, there are things we can do for ourselves in planning ceremonies. There are ways that we can reclaim that so that it is cheaper, still beautiful, and still comforting for our loved ones. So I think there's a lot. I think the public debate is as important as any kind of direct intervention. And as somebody who's worked in the community my whole life, I want to be part of kind of pushing that public debate and just holding on to the idea that the whole point of a ceremony, whatever the occasion that prompts the ceremony, the whole point of it is that we come together and we honour a moment, a birth, a life, a union of people in love, or the death of someone who has lived their lives. And how do we do that in the best way for the people involved?
Oh, it's so interesting, Kate. I think that there is such a huge need for this. My mind is full of all the different experiences that over the years that certainly that I've collected in terms of those ceremonies. And as you say, I think so many of us assume there is only two options in terms of funerals. It's you're buried or you're cremated. Nothing else is kind of it's attached to those two options rather than it being that there is this huge space of opportunity there for it to be completely tailored to someone's wants, wishes, or the things that they find interesting or want to be remembered for. Really interesting, Kate. And I know that I'll go for it.
Sorry, I'm so pleased you mentioned this idea of a binary, that it's this way or that way, because I've been noticing that in relation to, if we stick to death, the idea that someone is either a person of faith and will have a faith-based ceremony, or they are a humanist, because often funeral directors will assume, okay, if you're not attached to a particular faith, I will get the humanist celebrant for you. And humanism is a philosophy in the same way that other organized religions are. It's just not a religious philosophy. And I am not anti-humanist. It's very important to say that. But that assumption that someone who isn't attached to a faith will automatically have a humanist service, I think is problematic, because if someone didn't live their life explicitly as a humanist, why should that label be attached to their final ceremony? So I'm technically trained as a civil celebrant. Other people say independent celebrant or professional celebrant, and none of those words fit how I conceptualize it. So I refer to myself as a community celebrant, because I'm quite happy for there to be faith-based content in a ceremony, because the ceremony should honor the life that was lived, in my view, and that's the values that I bring to my work. And if that is wholly secular, if it's mostly secular with a little bit of music or reading from a faith-based approach, I have no problem with that, because that is how we pay tribute to the life that was lived.
I had no idea there was so much politics in these things in terms of the different terms, and
Yeah.
really interesting. I wonder, Kate, so you've been running now for just under
6 months.
I was going to say, under 12 months or 6 months. How has your journey been so far? Have there been any bumps in the road, any lessons that you would want to share with us so far?
The journey has been mostly fantastic. I planned to set up long before I did, so I gave a year of notice at work, at the longest notice period ever. And I did some of my very great training, including the Business with Purpose course, before I made the leap from work. So the bumps on the way have been, I guess, moments of overwhelm, where you have a lot of practical tasks that you need to do to set up a practice. Get busy on social media, learn how Instagram works if you're not using it, learn how to build a website. So I think regardless of the topic area that you set up your social business, those initial setup tasks are there. I think that my way of overcoming those tasks has been to make use of any and all the support available. And there is a lot of support, and I'm unapologetic about making use of it, because that's what it's there for. And some of it lands really well, where you think, oh, this is just exactly what I needed at that moment that it was available. And some of it you think, okay, that might work later for me, but it's not immediately sort of meeting the need that I have here and now. So I think anyone setting up needs to go out and try it all. But yeah, so I've had bumps along the way just by the amount of tasks on the to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have made use of the help that I can access to be able to work my way through those tasks.
Brilliant. And tell us, Kate, if we fast forward 12 months, 2 years, I know that you're saying that that the aim for this isn't taking over the world, it's depth of impact perhaps rather than breadth. But what does it look like? What's it going to be?
It's going to look like, for me, it would be about a breadth of impact in terms of pushing the conversation forward, and a
Okay.
depth of impact in terms of individuals and families sort of supported in their happy and sad moments. So I know we've focused a lot on death in our conversation and funerals, but actually there's a lot of joyful celebrating in this role as well. So for me, it would be about people knowing that they can tap into a celebrant where values is part of their, the decision making, and think, okay, I don't have to just follow these particular routes. I don't have to just be one or the other. If I'm in the space in between, I can have a ceremony that reflects that. So if we think, for example, a naming ceremony, there are lots of reasons why someone might want to have a naming ceremony. So I think for me, I will feel like success will be about seeing more people making choices for ceremonies that are true to them, but also pushing the conversation on so that talking about the difficulty of making decisions around death is something that we're more ready to do, and that it becomes something that we less want to run away from. Yeah. And I'll have just thought, well, I've contributed a wee bit to that, and I'll be happy if I can say that.
Wonderful. And Kate, just to finish our conversation, hopefully you've got a wonderful audience of change makers listening to you speak today. So is there anything that we can do to support you and your mission, or anything that we should be doing ourselves in relation to your mission?
I think on two levels. I think what I would encourage individuals to do in their own lives is to think ahead to their end of life, but also think ahead to their key moments in life and how they would want to have those moments marked. In relation to my mission as a community celebrant, I guess it would be to just promote that idea that actually your values, and I think the word authenticity is overused a lot, but that ceremonies can encapsulate all your values as well as be the following very kind of pre-scripted processes. So yeah, get involved in my social media, get involved in the conversation, book me to come and speak. If you run a community group and you think that that's something that members would be interested in having a conversation about, get in touch and I'll come along and talk about whatever it is people want to talk about under that theme.
Amazing. Well, we'll be sharing all of your links so people can absolutely get directly in touch with you.
Thank you.
But for now, thank you very much. Whilst Kate has only been running her organisation for 6 months, her journey started well over a year ago. And I think this approach to starting a new venture is probably worth highlighting a little bit more. Quite often, as change makers, I think we are either forced into a position of change or we jump into it perhaps a little bit too quick. And the challenge with that is if we haven't got some of the things lined up, like how we're going to pay our personal bills and that kind of stuff, it can squeeze our creativity and almost take the joy out of the potential creative process. So I think Kate's approach to steadily developing her organization until it was ready to launch with this very clear route to starting, I think that there's something wonderful in that. And that's not to take anything away from people who have managed to bootstrap and, despite not having all of that lovely organizational time, be able to do amazing things. I just think that if you are at the point where you're thinking, I might have something here, maybe consider taking the time to develop that further whilst you're in your safe place, whether that's working, you've got a lovely payout from being redundant, or you're on maternity leave, whatever it is that you're doing. But I just thought that was quite interesting that she did take that time. I also really love her approach to the pay it forward model. So the pay it forward model is quite often associated specifically with social enterprises. But rather than getting hung up on legal structures and trying to squish her organization into the social enterprise structure, Kate understood exactly what she wanted her organization to achieve and took the elements of other approaches, so the pay it forward model, and made it work for her organization. She took the things that were in line with her values and her mission, and she created something that was completely fit for purpose for what she was trying to achieve. I think all too often we see people who are forced into legal structures that perhaps don't quite fit. For example, community interest companies. I think quite often people are told, "Oh, you want to get a grant, or if you've got a business that's doing a bit of good, it should be a kick." Whereas actually, I think Kate is a perfect example of how a kick structure perhaps could strangle this rather than it being a sole trader, Kate doing the stuff that she loves most, being passionate, having that opportunity to make a difference in the world without all the red tape that was perhaps going to be holding her back. So I really hope that you enjoyed listening to Kate as much as I did. Be sure to connect with her and check out all of the links. And don't forget, you can subscribe to Chats with Changemakers for more brilliant interviews like this one. And you can also now join the free Northeast Changemakers community to connect with more people just like Kate. Catch you next time.
If you've been inspired by what you've heard today, come and join our free Northeast Changemakers community to meet like-minded people and start your journey to changing the world.